Welcome to Transfer Take 5, where we explore 5 aspects of transfer each episode. I'm Melissa Swafford, your host and director of the Transfer Centers at Tri-C, and today I am joined by Kayla Dennis and Thomas Ryan from Cleveland State. So why don't we start? Why don't you guys introduce yourself, but thank you for being here.
Yes, of course. Thank you for having us. My name is Kayla Dennis. I am the Transfer Recruitment Specialist in the Undergraduate Office of Admissions at Cleveland State. I'm here to answer any questions that you may have about transferring to CSU as your admissions counselor.
And Tri-C is your student population,
yes,
right?
That is correct.
You specialize for our students.
Yes.
We have the right person here today.
Yes, correct.
And Thomas?
And I'm Thomas Ryan. I'm actually a current student at Cleveland State University. I'm an undergraduate psychology major and neuroscience minor, and I am currently projected to graduate in May of 2025. And I'm a previous Tri-C graduate, so transferred from Tri-C to CSU.
Awesome. So we are very lucky to be joined by a Tri-C alumni who's soon to be an alumni of Cleveland State as well. So great. So listeners, you may realize this already, but Cleveland State is the #1 transfer destination for Tri-C students. So we're going to dive into 5 different aspects that often come up in this transfer planning process. So we are going to start with talking about support for transfer that Cleveland States have. So we've been a longtime partner, Tri-C and CSU. So what can students expect? What can a Tri-C student expect from CSU and help in the transfer planning process?
Yes, so I would say from a staff perspective, and of course I'd like Thomas to elaborate this on a student perspective, but definitely a diverse population, which I think a lot of students are looking for. They want to be able to get to know a number of different students, not just Tri-C students, but just other students from other avenues of life. I also think they want something that's very engaged, that's very hands-on, to where they'll be able to get experience as soon as they get to the university, because they really want to hit the ground running and making sure that they're studying things that they're passionate about. So making sure that they have opportunities for internships, just to get involved, see what campus offers them, both socially and academically, just to make sure that they're having, the best experience possible.
That's awesome. And the transfer services that are provided, both yourself, the advising, kind of what does that look like for a student while they're preparing?
Yes, so students are really looking to make sure that their credits transfer over as seamlessly as possible, and just to make sure they have that support throughout the entire transfer process. So we do allow students to do kind of what we consider is a pre-advising before meeting with their academic advisor to schedule their classes. So making sure that the student is meeting with one of our advisors in our office to evaluate their credits, let them know exactly how they would transfer over based on the degree that they're looking for. If a student is unsure about what degree they're looking for, they also can receive advice about based off of what they plan to do when they graduate, if they have a career in mind already. So just making sure that they have that support and that their credits transfer over, because we of course don't want them taking any classes that don't.
Yeah. Thomas, can you talk about what your experience was, the advising specifically?
Yeah, absolutely. I think the main word I would think of was smooth. I think seamless, like Kayla said. My advisor from Tri-C and my advisor from CSU actually knew each other. So it was a very easy process when they were able to communicate. So it was having an additional line of communication open was super smooth. And then the process of the credit evaluation and then projecting how my journey would continue on at CSU was very simple as well. Just because there is those pathways that they are lined out from Tri-C to CSU. So it makes it kind of a smooth transition. It was very easy to understand as well. I felt like I was going to be confused, but I wasn't, which was a very pleasant surprise.
Well, that's good. So advising is a really important part, and the pathways between the two institutions. And that kind of leads us to the second part, making sure your credits transfer kind of leads into the second one, which is affordability. And so Kayla, what has CSU been doing to make sure that it is affordable for transfer students?
Yes. So actually we just introduced some new scholarships for our transfer students, which I am very excited about.
I'm excited about those too.
Yes. So we now offer yearly scholarships. Before we were just only offering them for certain semesters, but students can be eligible for the fall, spring, and summer semester scholarships. They start at a 3.0 GPA and award above based off of your GPA, and they can be up to $2,500. Students can also maintain those scholarships throughout their 2 years as long as they meet the requirements, which is 12 credits or more, which is a full-time student, student and a 2.0 cumulative GPA. So we offer a number of different transfer scholarships for students based off of their GPA, as well as we do have college-specific scholarships that students can also be eligible for depending on what they're majoring in. So a number of different ways that students can receive aid, as well as, on top of their FAFSA and things like that go.
That's awesome. And how about tuition? Kind of, students are coming from Tri-C, which they're used to, for a community college, we are the lowest tuition in the state.
Mm-hmm.
How about, in terms of a 4-year, where does CSU fall?
We are currently listed as one of the lowest tuition rates in Ohio for transfer students. So our tuition is around a little bit more than $12,000 a year. But there are a number of different payment plans that students can go on if that works better for them. But we are considered one of the lowest universities in Ohio. So very exciting. We try to keep it affordable.
Yeah. And that paired with those pathways that are simple and smoothless definitely keeps everything affordable.
Mm-hmm.
So Thomas, I just wanted to kind of switch gears a little bit and ask, institutional fit, making sure that the institution or the school that you're going to is right for you. And a lot of students miss this part of the conversation. They show up and say, I'm going to X. And then they're just like, why? Well, because it's right there, or it's, it's the only thing I know, or those type of things. But you had shared some things about why you both picked Tri-C as well as CSU. So why don't we start at why you started at Tri-C?
Yeah, absolutely. I think one of the main factors that led me to Tri-C was like affordability, being very like conscious of like value versus how much you're paying for it. I think Tri-C definitely matches that like expectation in my mind. I was always really happy with like the amount of value that I got for my tuition. There's also like the aspect of it being kind of like a stepping stone to continue on to like a further university. When I started in higher education, I wasn't completely set on what I wanted to do. I was thinking about like computer science or business, which is very different to what I'm doing now, psychology. So when I was at Tri-C, I actually took an introductory psychology course, and that was the thing that kind of made it like click in my head, and it sparked like my interest in psychology, and I realized like, oh, this is where I want to be. So having that like exploratory like stepping stone was like a very good, I think, aspect of my journey for me. So then like the value in the stepping stone, and then like moving on to CSU is always kind of like a logical, next step in my mind. Having that like affordability continue on, like the value I know was a big factor in my decision. And then I also have been like a Cleveland native for my entire life. So CSU is always like very involved in the community and very like present around me. So I think it was like all of those combined kind of made it like a logical next step, like progression from step to step for me in my journey.
That's awesome. And so it was purposeful, and kind of value, affordability, and location were kind of the things driving that. Let's talk a little bit. So we talked about like pre-admission advising and how that works. But once you're at CSU, talk about your experiences with academic advising and registration and what that looks like for a student.
I was like very pleasantly surprised with the advising experience at CSU. There's like a very ease of access kind of feeling to it, where you don't feel like you have to like jump through hoops to get an advising appointment or anything like that. It's very easy to talk to your advisor. And there's also like the aspect of, I feel like there's like a professional working relationship I've had with my advisors, where it doesn't feel like I'm just talking to someone about like these like various like academic things. It feels like they care about like the journey that I'm on, which is huge. It's very important. So having that built on is like very valuable, I think, and it helps you. But again, I think like the ease of access and the convenience, knowing that like at any point you have someone there to ask questions that would like know the answers or direct you in the right way to go is very, very valuable.
And I think you mentioned to me that you have a faculty advisor as one of your advisors.
Yes.
Can you talk more about how that relationship works?
Oh, absolutely. So my faculty advisor mostly focuses on psychology and things like grad school, which are kind of like related to psychology. So I have like an advisor specifically for like more like complicated major related questions like that. And then I also have a general advisor through the TRIO program who focuses more on like the general aspects of like university life and things like that. So kind of like one for each is super helpful as well, for sure.
Yeah. So you kind of have both sides supported
Yes.
overall. So, well, and you mentioned TRIO. So I know you had shared with me that you are a first generation college student. And so for listeners, just to give you a sense, a first generation student is a student whose parents or guardians have not completed a college degree. And so at Tri-C, we have about 68% of our students are first gen. So it's not a surprise, but I think that is a unique experience. And so you mentioned TRIO. Can you talk a little bit more about the TRIO program at CSU and how it supported you as a first gen student?
Oh, of course. So my experience with the TRIO program has been like extremely positive. They've helped me in a number of ways. Mostly with that aspect of I wasn't really sure how college life would be going in because I haven't had that like family experience to like build off of. So they've helped me adjust in a number of ways. I had the opportunity to take like a career course one semester that helped me a little bit. There's also like extracurriculars, like trips and meetings and things like that. I went to a meeting covering like the FAFSA and how to fill that out and everything. So it's like very like helpful, like practical information a lot of the times that you can apply. So having that like extra support and then the advising as well is super helpful because they know to kind of tailor it to like a different experience than what someone going to university might have just because you have like that first generation experience.
Awesome. And you had mentioned before that you went on a trip with TRIO. Why don't you tell us about that?
So last spring break, this past semester, I actually had the opportunity to go to Washington, D.C. with the TRIO program, which was super neat. It was super interesting. It was kind of like an educational, but also like fun, adventurous journey. It was definitely super nice. I believe it was for 3 or 4 days. So it was kind of like an extensive trip. But yeah, we got to see a lot of DC and it was like cool. And it was kind of like a community bonding sense of experience as well.
And what advice would you give a first generation student who's at Tri-C and they're planning for transfer? They want to get their bachelor's degree. What advice would you give them?
I would definitely say that utilizing like all the resources at your like disposal is always like a good first step. I wasn't aware of a lot of the resources I had access to. So I think having that knowledge or even like reaching out to like inquire about what resources you have access to is like a super good step. And then I think like relying on the people that are there to help you, like the staff members is always good as well. Because I think that was the main thing that helped me like ease through the transition process.
Awesome. Kayla, kind of from your perspective, the students you meet with, because I know you meet with a lot of our Tri-C students. How do you feel that CSU, what does to support our first gen students?
I definitely feel like we are kind of their home away from home, but without being too forward. We want to make sure that students feel comfortable coming to us with any questions that they may have. If they need additional support, we are there to provide that for them. We definitely make sure that they are ready to go. We don't kind of like stop holding their hand until they are admitted into their courses and that they're fully going. We want to make sure that they are able to do the best that they can and make sure that we're setting them up for success. We don't want to just throw them to the wolves, essentially. So making sure that they have that support all the way through, especially for any students that may be coming from like the greater Cleveland area who don't have, whether it be like they need housing necessities, food necessities, just making sure that they have that support so that they're able to be successful.
Awesome. And as we finish up today, would each of you share one other like piece of advice or something we haven't covered that you would like prospective Tri-C students to know about for transferring to CSU?
I would definitely say ask questions. And I know that sounds silly because, of course, ask questions. But I promise you, if there's something that you don't know, there's going to be someone there to support you. Definitely make sure that you take the reins on your academics because at the end of the day, it's your experience and we want to make sure that you have the best experience. So if there's anything you don't know, if you want additional opportunities for like internships, jobs, things like that, ask for them, advocate for yourself, and make sure that you are doing what you can to be successful as possible.
Awesome. And Thomas?
I think I would say maybe like playing to your strengths or matching your experience to like your wants or like desires is always important. I think like doing that extra bit of research to kind of like go deeper into like the programs or the schools or institutions that you're looking at is always super helpful as well, because then you know kind of what to expect going in or to compare different ones.
That's awesome. And just as we finish, Thomas, what's the post-graduation plans after May 2025?
So far, I believe I'm entering the workforce for a period, just to get some work experience, to fill out my resume, to kind of like bolster it a little bit. And then I'm hoping to return for grad school for something related to psychology, although I'm not exactly sure what program to. So hopefully that gap helps me narrow it down as well.
Yeah, that grad school search is kind of like a transfer search. So use your resources and figure that out. So, well, thank you both for joining us for Transfer Take 5. It's been great, and learning from you and hearing all of the experiences.
Yes. Thank you for having us.
Much.
Yeah.